All right, guys, today we're talking about fragrances that people forgot about. Fragrances that I remember when I first started talking about fragrances back 13 or so years ago. These are the fragrances that people were talking about. So these have kind of almost been forgotten about because a lot of other fragrances, got released and we just got distracted with all the new fragrances and we forgot about these fragrances. So today I'm going to talk about 25 fragrances that potentially you might have forgotten about, or maybe you're brand new and you are discovering some more recent offerings, more recent fragrance releases, and you haven't discovered these fragrances yet. But these are very important ones that you should check into. And just a little reminder, if you remember smelling these, wearing them, time to revisit them again, right? Let's get started with the list. We've got 25 fragrances here. Going to the house of L'Artisan Parfumeur. It's Timbuktu. Who's familiar with this one? This is one of a string of fragrances created by Bertrand Duchaufour for the house of L'Artisan. And I think it's stood the test of time. It's still selling, and one that you should get your nose on, especially if you like vetiver, if you like patchouli, and some light fruity notes and, resinous incensey notes as well. To me, what I really like is the vetiver is pretty prominent. You have that touch of patchouli in here, slight smokiness with the incense. And then the papyrus is also quite prominent here, a really awesome note that to me is kind of like a cross between vetiver, patchouli, maybe some other aromatic woods. So it's a really nice smell that gives it fragrances a little slight booziness. And then what you have in here also, light spices like pink pepper, resins and ambery notes in the base. And don't forget, there's mango in here, which I wouldn't say this is a fruity fragrance, but it adds a nice contrast. It sweetens and softens up mostly base notes, heavy fragrance that this is. It's truly an awesome fragrance. It's a really sexy fragrance to me. The combination of vetiver and patchouli, I think, is a top-notch combo, but also it butches up fragrances and makes them uber masculine. This is definitely one you should try if you haven't yet. One of the earlier classics. It's a Bertrand Duchaufour masterpiece, I think. And a great fragrance to definitely check out, especially if you like woods, earthy notes, resins, amber, with the spices, and then that light touch of the mango that comes in here to kind of balance it out. Like I said, sweetens up the fragrance a little bit, not too much, but to me, it's super awesome. One of my favorite from the house of L'Artisan, which lately I don't really know what L'Artisan's doing as far as fragrances go. What is like truly an outstanding fragrance, a fragrance that totally stands out from the house. If you guys are familiar with the house and you've been, checking out what they're releasing lately, let us know. Add a comment below. I'd like to find out what the brand is releasing that's worthy of getting your nose on. I'll be headed to Europe soon. I'll definitely check out the brand and see what they've launched. But it's been a while. I haven't really dug into the house for a long time. Now let's move on to one of my favorite fragrance houses. They still release some great releases. This is also another classic French house, just like L'Artisan. L'Artisan is an older house. This is Serge Lutens. We've got Ambre Sultan, one of my favorites from the house. And also one of the ones you can easily get. I was originally thinking I'd put Fianagi, but the brand does so many changes to their fragrances, moving them from one collection to the other. So Fianagi recently went from the tall, thin black bottles into the bell jars. So that one's not going to be very easy to get. But Ambre Sultan, to me, is so super awesome. It's resinous, it's spicy, it's balsamic. It's got green aromatic herbal notes in here. And to me, it makes for a really super awesome, really amazing amber fragrance. Definitely one of the best from the house. And it's long standing. I believe this came out in the 90s. So maybe in the early 2000s. But to me, it's truly one of the best ambers. And when I got into the world of fragrances early 2012 and started creating content, this is one of the first ambers I bought. And to this day, it still smells great. What I like about this one that's really cool compared to other ambers is the green herbal aromatic notes that contrast with the resinous balsamic, amber, vanilla kind of notes that are in here that are more deeper, warmer, resinous kind of experience with the contrast of those green herbal aromatic notes and spices. Super awesome scent. Ambre Sultan. Definitely not many people are talking about these fragrances, so totally worth checking out. Especially, like I said, if you've been around for a while, you're probably caught up in what's coming out new. I am as well. I always fall back on my classics. I really love them. And I wanted to highlight some of these fragrances for you guys if you forgot them. And those of you that are brand new to this world, something to discover if you haven't discovered these already. So let's move on to the next fragrance. And most of the fragrances today are niche houses. This is one of the only designers that I've listed here, but I feel like they make niche offerings or niche style fragrance offerings. This is from the house of Comme des Garçons. This is Black. One of my favorite fragrances from Comme des Garçons. It's called Black because a lot of the ingredients are black. So they are using black ingredients in this. So what I really like about this one, it's smoky, it's leathery, it's resinous, and licorice. That's what's really unique about this. The leather and the licorice and the incense, the black pepper, olibanum or frankincense, and then there's birch. But that licorice in here, another black ingredient, is a nice contrast and very unique for me to enjoy something like this. Although I think this came out probably around the same time as the incense series, somewhere around there, not exactly. So it kind of fits the brand. And I could have mentioned Avignon here. That's part of the incense series, but I think Avignon is pretty talked about still. But something like this is truly an awesome scent that doesn't get spoken much about, but it really needs to be highlighted and discussed. And if you are someone that enjoys the brand and haven't tried this one yet, please do. It's an awesome scent. I guess the only negative for that fragrance is it's an eau de toilette, so it's not super heavy and dense. But the type of notes they're using are all darker, intense, more bass heavy notes to begin with. So the fragrance doesn't come off wimpy or anything like that, but it is the concentration eau de toilette, so it does come off light. But Black is an awesome scent, one of my favorites from the house. I really love the bottle as well. And to your hands, the feeling is nice and matte. It's almost like a chalkboard. You can write on it. But really cool fragrance from Comme des Garçons. Definitely needs to be highlighted here. Let me know if you're familiar with that one. But let's move on to État Libre Orange. So these are a lot of brands that were popular in the 90s and into the early 2000s. And, new fragrances, new houses come out, and we kind of forget about some of these fragrances that pretty much set the groundwork for a lot of brands that came after, and definitely worth checking out. But État Libre Orange launched in the mid-2000s, and I think this was one of the earlier launches. It's probably around 2006. I think it's, what's his name? Antoine Lee is the guy who created this. I think he also created Secretions Magnifique, but I'm not talking about Secretions Magnifique today. This is Rien. Totally kind of an old school style fragrance. Once again, it's dark and smoky. It's also animalic. It's got resinous ambery notes. It's got aldehydic notes. To me, it kind of reminds me of, they also have the Rien Intense version of this fragrance as well, which is the more deeper, more intense take on this fragrance. Which to me, this DNA kind of does remind me of Kouros, if you're familiar with that fragrance. Earlier on from YSL. This came out probably about 25 years after Kouros launched. This is like 2006. Kouros launched, I think, in 2001. I'm sorry, 1981. What am I saying? But it's kind of similar. It's leather, it's incense, there's aldehydic notes, there's patchouli, oak moss, there's labdanum. There's styrax in here, kind of give you a burnt, smoky experience. But to me, it reminds me of that whole Kouros style fragrance, which I'm a big fan of, and still to this day consider it one of the best fragrances ever created by Pierre Bourdon. It's a masterpiece, I think, although it's a very polarizing fragrance. So since that's polarizing, I believe Rien is also pretty polarizing, but definitely worth checking out if you like things a little bit animalic, because this stuff is so awesome. Let me know if you're familiar with that one. Totally worth checking out. If you're new, if you've forgotten about it, head over, get a sample, or buy a bottle. Everything is timestamp tagged, by the way. And if you're in the market for any of these fragrances, you can check them out. And before I move on to the next fragrance, also, État Libre d'Orange Rien Intense Incense is also worth checking out. I'm putting this one here in today's video. I could have brought the other fragrance, which it's right across from me, but I'm not going to bring it. This is, I think, the original, and I think this is probably a lot more popular than the Rien Intense Incense, and one that you might have come across because this is the original, as I was saying. But both of them are great. If you like it a bit more intense, go with the Rien Intense Incense. If you like a lighter, go with Rien. But honestly, I'm just going to give you this. It's a very powerful fragrance, whichever version you go with. If you go with this one, I'm not saying it's a baby, it's a wimp. It's got some beefiness. It's got some potency. And of course, it's got animalic touches. So be warned with that. Let's move on to the next fragrance. This is Nasomatto Pardon. Yeah, one of my earlier fragrance loves. Although in 2012, I went to Barney's to buy Black Afghano. On that visit, that was my very first time buying a fragrance from Barney's. On that visit, I also discovered Portrait of a Lady. I'm not featuring Portrait of a Lady here today because I feel like it's still pretty popular. But I feel like, same thing with Black Afghano. I think it's still one of the ones that people speak about. But Pardon is one that I think people have forgotten about, which should totally be highlighted. It's dark chocolate with oud. There's sandalwood in here. There's a little bit of tonka, warm spices, some lighter floral notes. To me, it's super sexy. I feel like there's patchouli in this. I don't know why. It also kind of hints at something like Heritage from Guerlain. I don't know if you guys get the similarities or not. Not identical. I'm just mentioning that there are some reminders in the fragrance to Heritage, whereas Heritage is quite a bit aromatic, but I think the sandalwood in this and the sandalwood in Heritage and the fact that it reminds me a little bit of patchouli and things like that give me some reminders of Heritage. But this is its own creation. I absolutely love this one. When I pull it out and smell it, it's super sexy. And I enjoy this one a lot more than Black Afghano, even though Black Afghano is probably the one that's much more popular than this. And that's the first fragrance I bought from the house, but this was my second, and I'm in love with the way it smells. It's an awesome scent if you haven't tried this one yet. This is Pardon from the house of Nasomatto. I do have to say the juice color has changed. I think the juice color was different before. What do you guys think? I discovered Nasomatto not at Barney's because for a little bit, this brand was at Neiman Marcus here earlier in the 2010s, and then it moved to Barney's, or maybe it was at Barney's as well. I can't 100% remember, but it's a great brand, I think, and one of the best is Pardon. So if you haven't tried that one, please do. The chocolate oud thing is awesome, but it does give me the reminder of patchouli, which also makes it really cool for me. All right, let's move on to the house of Histoires de Parfums. This is 1740, Marquis de Sade. Although I think they're not using the figures' names anymore, from what I remember. A lot of the fragrances have a year, a date, not a date, but a year, and then they have a famous historical figure. In this case, it's Marquis de Sade. I know they have one with Casanova, but various other figures that kind of they've stopped mentioning those names, and it's just the years now. But this is one that I wore quite a bit of. My very first fragrance from this house was Moulin Rouge, but this was my second favorite. Really enjoyed this scent, really love the way it smells. And it's leathery, it's boozy, it's dry and leafy. Like there's Immortelle here, there's leather, as I said, there's ambery notes, earthy patchouli notes, spicy notes. But super awesome scent, really sexy. It's a very, very sexy scent to me. And the combination of the patchouli with the Immortelle is quite unique, but it works with the Immortelle having those kind of brown sugary, caramelly, sweet, dry, leafy, almost curry-like touches. I've got a fragrance here that's coming up that's also utilizing that note even more prominently. But here, all the notes together kind of comes off super boozy. It's ambery, it's leathery, and it's dry and spicy. Super amazing though. Really, really awesome. And definitely one of the best from the house if you don't count Noir Patchouli and their Amber 114. But for me, the first fragrance I wore from the house, as I said, was Moulin Rouge. There used to be a store here called Gumps. I think it's still around, but it's not as big as it used to be. And Gumps had all these like very expensive gift things you can buy for people. It's a great store. And then they also had perfumes and kind of like body care and soaps and candles and things like that. And this brand was there. And I saw like they were clearing out the brand for some strange reason. And I bought Moulin Rouge as that was pretty much the only one that was left besides another one that I didn't care for. Moulin Rouge is still available if you guys are familiar with that scent. It's not available. I don't think it's distributed, but it's available in their store in Paris. Maybe it's distributed. I don't know. But if you like powdery fragrances, definitely that's one for you to try. But going back to 1740, it's awesome. Please try it. It's definitely one of the earlier niche fragrances and one of the earlier niche houses. The brand, I think, launched in the late 90s, if not the early 2000s, probably around the same time Frederic Malle launched. Let's move on to the House of Parfum, the Empire. Another one of my first amber loves, but a lot of people don't talk about this brand, and this is definitely one of the best from this house. This is Ambre Russe from Parfum the Empire. So this is created by Marc-Antoine Corticchiato. This is his own brand. He's the perfumer behind the fragrances of this house. And this is also a boozy fragrance, but a boozy amber. Even though the notes are vodka and champagne, I feel like there's the boozy characteristic of something like rum or whiskey or cognac in here, because it does act like that. Also, there's a slight bit of fruitiness, like almost like dried fruity touches in here, which I think combined with that and the fact that there's a boozy effect happening makes the fragrance super awesome. I love that about it. It gives a lightness to the fragrance, and there's also tea in this. There's musk, there's coriander, there's tea, there's cardamom. I'm sorry, there's no cardamom. I think it's just coriander, not cardamom. And then, of course, champagne and cinnamon and amber in here with vodka. Super awesome amber. I actually have bought, when the brand was in the previous branding, they had a few of their fragrances come in a 500 ml bottle. I still have a bunch of my 500 ml bottle, and I just love this fragrance. It's definitely one for you to try if you haven't yet. Ambre Russe is super amazing. One of the best classic ambers, I would say. It's been around for a good 20 years, if not more, give or take. But if you haven't tried this house, please do. This is Ambre Russe from Parfum the Empire. So let's talk about Montale and Patchouli leaves. Yeah, a lot of people talk about psychedelic, one of my favorites, things like that, reminiscence patchouli. But this patchouli from Montale is also a really solid chocolate cakey patchouli in the end. And it's worth discovering if you haven't yet. And it has the strength of Montale fragrances. And it's super earthy and also very resinous. There's boozy touches here. It's quite boozy and also chocolate cakey. But in the end, it's patchouli, very earthy patchouli, combined with amber notes, vanillic notes, resinous, balsamic notes, and musk. It's powerful like a lot of Montale fragrances, but it's super in-your-face patchouli. But going into that chocolate cakey direction where, you know, it's the combination of the earthiness of the patchouli with the kind of the ambery, resinous, syrupiness of the vanilla touches together. That creates that effect. It's not necessarily smelling like chocolate. It's the effect of chocolate cakey patchouli. But if you're familiar with fragrances like Psychedelic, Reminiscence Patchouli, Patchouli Antique from Le Nereids, Real Patchouli, which I also have here coming up, then you're going to be, all over this fragrance because it has similarities. But this also has the strength of Montale fragrances. And Montale fragrances are pretty potent, but definitely one not to skip over. For the patchouli lover, this is Patchouli Leaves from Montale. If you haven't tried it yet, please do. It's super awesome. We're talking about the House of Jovoy next, and we're not talking about Psychedelic. Psychedelic is one that I speak about quite a bit. Also, I speak a lot about Incident Diplomatique. But this one, I think it's kind of forgotten. It needs to be highlighted again. This is private label. And speaking of vetiver and patchouli once again, and kind of a similar idea to their Incident Diplomatique, which is also vetiver and patchouli, but they're completely different fragrances, so night and day different. This is more like an old vintage wood cigar bar, dark whiskey, cigar smoking, very antique wood smell. Eventually it gets, dry and ambery and woody in the base. But for sure you have boozy touches here because the patchouli and I think the papyrus, they have papyrus in the notes, generally comes off a bit boozy for me. It creates a barrel-aged boozy effect. And here with the patchouli and vetiver, and as I mentioned, papyrus also has the patchouli vetiver kind of woods kind of a smell, aromatic smell, and it creates that effect with this, which is quite awesome. Super amazing fragrance created by Cécile Zarokian. Very masculine, super duper masculine, but it's boozy, it's earthy, it's smoky because it also has birch, but again, very, very masculine, but really awesome smell. It's a bold fragrance. If you're into more unisex or feminine fragrances, this might come off too masculine for you. But to me, it is pretty solid. Really awesome scent from Jovoy. And also, created by Cécile Zarokian. She makes some great fragrances. I think Cécile created 2 fragrances for Jovoy. One is private label. The other one is Remember Me. I don't think she's ever done any other fragrances for the house. But let's move on to the House of Tower Perfumes. L'air du Désert Marocain. Yeah, it's one of my early amber loves. I really fell for these ambers early on in my journey with fragrances, so I'm a big fan. I'm not mentioning Maître Parfumeur Gantier's Ambre Perso because I've spoken quite a bit about it, but probably a lot of people have forgotten about it. So maybe I'll feature that fragrance in the next video. But for me, it was Ambre Perso, L'air du Désert Marocain, Ambre Sultan, and Ambre Russe. Those 4 fragrances I discovered early on and was obsessed with ambers. But with Tower Perfumes, L'air du Désert Marocain, it's such a unique offering. So completely different. It's a dry, dark, and dusty amber. And there's also ambergris here, so it has a little bit of saltiness. There's coriander, which kind of seems like the theme of today's video is coriander, because I'm seeing coriander come up quite a bit. I absolutely love coriander, and it's featured here. But what makes this fragrance so unique is the petitgrain note, the green leaves of the bitter orange tree, nicely contrasted here against those other notes that I mentioned. Super awesome. Really amazing fragrance, but it is on the dry side. I need to buy the latest flanker of this fragrance that Tower Perfumes launched. Was it called Absolute or Elixir? I can't remember what it was called, but they have L'air du Désert Marocain, they have A Cour de Désert, and then the new L'air du Désert Marocain, which, like I said, I need to buy. I think I'll pick up when I'm in Europe because it's a little cheaper over there. But one of the best ambers ever created, I think, and still, I think, very solid fragrance from the House of Tower Perfumes, probably the biggest seller for the brand. And if you haven't tried this one, please try it. If you've forgotten about it, circle back and check it out. It's still really, really awesome. What an amazing scent this is. So that is L'air du Désert Marocain from the House of Tower Perfumes. So this video is kind of like a journey with my own fragrance obsessions throughout the years, but a lot of these are earlier fragrances. Like this next one, discovered around 2013. This is Pierre Guillaume's Coze. But when I discovered this fragrance, it wasn't Pierre Guillaume. He was the perfumer, but the name of the brand was Parfumerie Generale. And I think what he did was he had multiple different brands for fragrances, and he just changed the name of all of those brands to just call it by his name, Pierre Guillaume. But very underrated fragrance and house. And I think people have forgotten about the brand. This stuff is awesome. This is the very first fragrance I bought from a very small perfume shop, indie niche perfume shop from the city of Aix-en-Provence. I mean, that's where I first discovered the brand, although I knew about it, but I hadn't sampled their fragrances yet. And when I was in this town, I found this store, and that's where they were selling the brand, and they had a lot of different fragrances. I was testing them out because I was in that city for a week, and I'd go back a few days, and the lady there running the store gave me a bunch of samples to test them out. And in the end, I went with this. It was either this one or Musk Maori, and I'm not sure if Musk Maori still sells, but Coze is patchouli in the end, but with dark chocolate, cannabis, coffee, and black pepper. There's ebony, there's tobacco. So it's once again a dark, kind of masculine offering here, even though it has chocolate, even though it has coffee. It is not gourmand. It's super aromatic, spicy, herbal, green, and earthy. It's great scent. Really awesome scent. Coze is super awesome, and definitely worth checking out if you haven't. The brand is also really awesome. One of their more recent fragrances that I really love is Tonka Body Con, and I also really love Animal Mondaine, but they make some amazing fragrances. Pierre Guillaume is an awesome perfumer. Really, really awesome. And it's a very underrated brand. So if you haven't tried the house, please do. Start with Coze. It's number 2. I don't know what number 1 was. I can't remember. But yeah. I don't have too many fragrances from the house. I can probably do a short deep dive on the brand. Maybe I will. But for now, Coze is truly an amazing scent that you should check out. And this next fragrance also, a couple of years after, I think, Coze, or maybe just a year after I discovered, it's Floris Honey Oud. There was a lot of talk about this one for a while. Floris was having a moment, I think. I think the brand's kind of rebranding recently. But Honey Oud is totally different than Honey Oud from Montale. This to me was seriously honeyed. There's the syrupy honey effect happening in this. And so it's a lot of honey with rose and oud. There's amber and vanilla. There's patchouli. There's musk. And I think there's labdanum in the notes as well. In the end, it's a syrupy, gooey fragrance with that oud accord that they have in here. And you have light touches of the rose coming. So it's kind of like a rose oud combo feeling in the end. But for me, when you take this, compare it with Honey Oud from Montale, the Montale should have been oud honey. I think that's what it should be called, I'm saying. I almost feel like it's more oud than honey. Here, it's appropriate to call it Honey Oud because it is more honey and in comparison to oud. But the oud comes in. It contrasts quite prominently, and you definitely notice the oud against the honey. But it's a nicely done fragrance that I spoke about quite a bit. They launched this. They launched... what was it? Leather Oud? I forgot the other one. I think it was Leather Oud. And at that time, Leather Oud from Dior was selling, so it was a complete different take on a Leather Oud fragrance. Also a little bit sweet like this, but not as sweet as this Honey Oud, because this one is super sweet with the honey and the amber and the vanilla. But yeah, I think the brand's kind of going through some stuff right now. But Honey Oud from Floris is a fragrance you should check out, especially if you're digging oud as a note. But let's move on to the house of Robert Piguet. This is Casbah. So if you want to rock the Casbah, you got to check this one out. Great song from The Clash. This is from a collection of fragrances that are more recent from Robert Piguet than some of their other classics like Fracas and Bandit or Bandit. This is created by Aurélien Guichard, who has the brand Matière Première, by the way. And to me, it's another incense. It's dry, dusty, a little green and peppery, lightly warm spices and powdery. But it smells like church to me. A lot of fragrances like this came out between the early 2000s into the 2010s, I think. I think the trend has kind of gotten slower lately, but I mean, Avignon, I think, started the trend. You know, we've got fragrances from Healy, Jovoy. Do we have one from Histoires de Parfums? I think that came out much later, but there's one from Orza Legrand. All kind of similar churchy incense fragrances, and they all go into different directions. This to me is more, there's also full incense from Montale, which is also kind of similar to Avignon. This is more churchy, not so much sweet and resinous in the dry down where it goes ambery and sweetens up. So it's quite peppery, and the fact that they've got angelica in here and iris, it's powdery and a bit green vegetal leaning as well. But what's going on with the brand? I don't hear much from them anymore. Is it folding? That would be sad. Robert Piguet's Casbah. Let me know who's a fan of that one. Same thing with Annick Goutal. I think I read recently Annick Goutal was purchased by or is working with Interparfums now. But I'm featuring Sables here. Sables is a Immortelle balm, by the way. And we have Immortelle already in Histoires de Parfums 1740. I think it's also perhaps in Ambre Russe a little bit too, I believe. But Sables is one of the more popular cult fragrances from Annick Goutal. I was thinking I'd feature Eau d'Adrien, but I've spoken about it quite a bit. It's like a superstar fragrance for the house. But this one's a bit more cultish and a bit more indie niche. Even the brand, previous brand owners and members, like the daughter of Annick Goutal from Goutal Paris and Annick Goutal, and the perfumer Isabelle Doyen have launched their own house, which is called Voyage Imaginaire. And they even have a fragrance sort of like this called L'Eau d'Immortelle. If you guys haven't tried that one, we have some in our Scent Club store. It's a much beefier take on this, but to me, this is like one of my very first Immortelle fragrance experiences. And again, Immortelle is it's the everlasting flower, helichrysum. It's also known as curry plant. It's very dry. It never dies. That's why it's called everlasting flower. It's kind of like autumnal, dry, almost crisp flowers. And so they use that in fragrances quite a bit. And they can do a lot of different things with it. In this case, it's kind of brown syrupy, molassesy, but also very spicy. And you can make it kind of caramelly, brown sugary, bring out the spiciness. I mean, so many different things. And again, this to me was one of my very first experiences with the Immortelle note. And I think to this day, it's probably one of the best. If you like Sables, you've already sampled it, revisit it, and also visit or check out Voyage Imaginaire's L'Eau d'Immortelle, because to me, it's the same perfumers that created this that created L'Eau d'Immortelle. They've just amplified it, added chocolate, amber, and patchouli to this mix. It's a much heftier, more intense, super strong fragrance, but this is the lighter fragrance, which I think is still pretty popular from the house, but nobody really talks about it, so I wanted to highlight it here. So that is Annick Goutal, Goutal Paris, Sables. If anybody has any info on the brand, let us know. For a while, when I was traveling to Paris, there used to be like multiple stores of Annick Goutal. I don't know what happened. The brand's not doing very well, which is sad. Not last fragrance. The next fragrance is Lubin Korrigan. What a unique fragrance this is. If you guys came to Scentfest SF and you visited the Osmotheque, and the gentleman that was in that installation Thomas Fontaine is the guy who created this fragrance for Lubin. So it's so unique, this fragrance. It's super unique. To me, what he's done to the fragrance has created a milk effect without adding any kind of a milky note in this. It's basically cognac, there's saffron. I think it's the ambrette note that's in here that is creating that. It's got whiskey, juniper, lavender, musk. There's even leather. I think there's some rose and oud. But wow, it's very musky and milky and fruity and boozy. But I feel like it has these kind of caramelly nuances that come through. It's so unique. It's a bit out there. I think it's not a very conventional fragrance, especially coming from the designer world. If this is new for you to check out something like this, you might give it some time. It's a bit out there, but there's a little bit of the effect of like hot milk that's been sweetened up with like something syrupy, molassesy, caramelly, all at the same time as being boozy. This is just one of the best fragrances I've put my nose on. But the brand is not the first fragrance I discovered from the brand. The first fragrance I discovered from this brand was Idole, Lubin's Idole, which is awesome. But I wanted to highlight this one because this one is out there, unique, and one of my favorite fragrances of all time, I think. All right, 16th fragrance I'm talking about is Carner Barcelona's D600. You guys familiar with this one? What's going on with this brand? Not much out there about them, which is kind of odd. I don't know if the brand ever caught on in the States. I think CGO Perfumery used to carry the brand. This, to me, a lot of people recommended this fragrance to me because apparently it was like Dior Homme Intense. While I see that there are some touches of that in here, especially because it's iris, there's vanillic notes and peppery notes. But this is a lot darker. It's almost also smelling like there's leather in here, but it's a lot of vetiver, cedar, there's jasmine, cardamom, but I didn't see leather mentioned anywhere. I pick up slight leathery undertones. And so, well, I think it makes sense because Dior Homme Parfum had leather. I don't think Dior Homme Intense had leather listed as a note, but I never really got leather from it, but I did get it from Dior Homme Parfum. This one comes off leathery to me. They're not listing that note, but you can totally notice the iris. It's quite powdery. It's also very peppery and super spicy and woody. But it does eventually come through with that lipsticky touch that Dior Homme Intense and Dior Homme Parfum have. But it's totally different. Like, it's a different take on that idea or styling of a fragrance. But still, it's enjoyable. I feel like they've taken that style or idea to a much more masculine direction. The other thing is you can also layer this with something like Dior Homme Intense, butch it up a little bit if you think Dior Homme Intense is quite unisex. Because this has a lot of woods. It's dark. It's darker. It's a bit dense. So layer the two together and you might have Dior Homme Parfum in a much darker way. But what's going on with the brand? I don't know much about what's going on. I haven't seen them for a while at the shows, although I did not go to Essence this year. I'll be going next year, but perhaps it's time to invite them to our show, Scentfest, for next year. But yeah, that's Carner Barcelona, and this is D600 from the House of Carner Barcelona. Let me know your thoughts on that brand. And next, we're talking about Gallivant. This is Istanbul. You guys familiar with Istanbul? I used to have a 30 ml bottle, their original bottles. Gone through that one. And glad to have this one now. This is the best in the line. Although I do like Tokyo. Wait, is it Tokyo? Yeah, it's Tokyo. Tokyo is good. It's green and wasabi-like. This to me is an awesome amber. It's resinous, it's balsamic, it's sweet, it's spicy, a little aromatic, a little earthy, but truly yummy. It's got a warmth about it, and I love that about it. And the brand, I think, is kind of disappearing, although maybe they might be around. They're just not very well represented at retailers. But do enjoy that warmth. This is quite warm and resinous, and there's an enveloping quality about this one because I find this kind of an amber fragrance. If you didn't notice, there's a lot of ambers featured here because I love this style. And this is a very enveloping, and it's almost like a hug, a warm, resinous hug. And to me, it smells great. It's the usage of the Apopanax, I think, in here that turns things around a little bit, makes them a little bit more unique. This also reminds me a little bit of Ambre Sultan, minus this has red thyme. The Ambre Sultan also had aromatic notes. So there's a little bit of a reminder of Ambre Sultan with the Gallivant in Istanbul. That's kind of why I like it. But I just love that warmth. It's warm, resinous. It's perfect fragrance to wear when it's cold outside because it gives you that kind of hugging quality. Super awesome. But yeah, I haven't kept up with the brand, but time to pull out your Istanbul if you have it and you haven't tried it on for a while, or maybe check it out, get a sample or buy a bottle because I think it's totally worth it, especially for amber lovers. And of course, we've got, autumn around the corner. Can't wait for autumn, and that's going to be perfect for autumn. But let's talk about Brecourt Paris next. This is Farah. This is the only fragrance I've ever bought, and I first discovered it at Jovoy Paris. But my first bottle that I bought of this was actually called Haram. They changed the name to Farah. This to me is the same idea as Ambre Narguilé from the house of Hermès or Wajan from the house of Parfums Marly. So it's in that kind of a style. So it's a lot of cinnamon. There's dates here. There's resinous notes like benzoin. There's tonka. There's labdanum. There's honey. There's leather. And it's gourmandesque. It's sweet. It's spicy. It's lightly fruity, but a little bit ambery. And I think you've got a nice, not super duper gourmand here that I feel like the style doesn't go out of style. Does that make sense? I don't know which came first, this or Wajan, but I think we know that Ambre Narguilé came way before this, I think, and Wajan. But what they've done is, Ambre Narguilé is a great scent. I've learned to love that fragrance. I just don't like the fact that it's an eau de toilette. It's very thin, but I think some people prefer it that way. But what Parfums Marly and this brand have done with that whole style is to give it some depth and intensity. And even though I find similarities, there are differences between the three fragrances. But in the end, it's similar warmth, cinnamon, tonka, honey. Gives you a little bit of a baklava experience too, which is kind of yummy. So that's Brecourt Paris Farah. So I also do not know what's going on with this brand. Last time I was in Paris, I went to Jovoy. I don't think I saw the brand there. I have to look for it next time I go, most likely in October after TFWA. But who knows the brand? And what are your thoughts on the fragrances? What happened to them? Add a comment below. Next, going to the house of Bois 1920. This is real patchouli. Yes, not Bois, guys, not Bois. Bois 1920 is from Italy, and their name is Bois 1920, not Bois 1920. One of the early patchouli loves. I discovered this at Barney's, actually, and that's where they corrected me, and they said, no, it's not Bois, it's Bois 1920. I discovered this at Barney's, but I also discovered Sushi Imperial, so I could have put both of those fragrances, but this brand is kind of forgotten about. Now I'm headed to Florence here in a few weeks for Pitti Fragranza, and the brand's based out of Florence. Let's see if their store is still there. But to me, this is one of the ultimate in patchouli fragrances. Similar to patchouli leaves, but I think it's a slight bit lighter. But it's patchouli, it's amber, there's tobacco in this, vanilla musk, there's some thyme, light woods. It doesn't get as chocolate cakey as patchouli leaves, but it does. It does. It's the ambery notes and the vanillic notes that usually does that with the patchouli. Just imagine taking one of my favorite treats as a younger adult was mixing carob syrup with tahini, and it makes this interesting clash, almost like peanut. Well, sesame paste is already kind of like peanut butter, but it's sesame butter, and then you've got this like not a chocolate but kind of chocolatey molasses, carob molasses, and the two together is what's going on here with this fragrance. You're taking the patchouli, in this case it's the carob, and you're mixing it with some lighter notes like the sesame, what do you call it? Syrup, sesame syrup. But yeah, the two together creates this kind of an effect, and that's what you're getting here with the chocolate and the amber vanillic notes. But check out Real Patchouli, super awesome, very yummy. Boys 1920, Real Patchouli from the house of Boys 1920. And then we're talking about another Italian house, also from Florence. This is I Profumi di Firenze, Vaniglia de Madagascar. So for a while, the brand was sold at Tiger Lily, which is now Ministry of Scent. The brand was also sold at Barney's for a while, and obviously Barney's went out of business. For a while, you can find the brand on Neiman Marcus. And Vaniglia del Madagascar is one of the more popular offerings from the house. It's a very fluffy, creamy take on vanilla with a little bit of green floral notes running throughout it. It's got a boozy undertone there, but the fluffiness is true, almost like marshmallowy. But imagine taking, for a while there used to be jarred marshmallows, and imagine taking that and drizzling it with vanilla and mixing it together. So it creates this combination of whipped kind of a marshmallow with a overdose of boozy vanilla. Super yummy, really yummy. This is kind of like cooking vanilla. You're cooking with it and you're mixing it in a bowl, like whipping it. And then throwing in something a little bit green, because there is that green kind of floral touch that is in here, contrasted against the whipped cream and the vanilla. Yeah, but what's going on with the brand? I'll have to find out. I'll be going back to Florence. I hope I have time to stop in. I'm only there for like 4 nights, I think. Anyway, that's Vaniglia de Madagascar from the house of I Profumi di Firenze. Do you guys know that house? Let me know. Add a comment below. All right, we've got 5 more brands left. We're talking about Volutes from the house of Diptyque. Yeah, I haven't spoken a lot about Diptyque fragrances. I kind of got bored of the brand, especially that they launched those series of new collection of fragrances. I felt like they weren't really clicking with me. But for me, one of my very early loves from the house was Volutes. It was the Eau de Toilette. And they had an Eau de Toilette of this, and it got discontinued. They only kept the Eau de Parfum, which I don't know what the reasoning behind it was. But maybe it wasn't selling. Maybe some ingredient got banned. But to me, Volutes is a forgotten fragrance that needs to be remembered because it's tobacco, iris, honey, spices, resinous notes. It's so good. So good. Tobacco and honey together, one of the best combinations. Obviously, Guerlain releases a fragrance called Tobacco Honey because it's a great combo. Here you also have the powdery iris. There's like warm spices mixed in there. And then I think it's warm spices because it's a very warm and resinous kind of experience. The spices that they're referring to. They don't really mention the spices. That could be cinnamon. It could be nutmeg. Not cloves, though. Maybe a little bit of ginger. And then the styrax note. But together, it's an awesome smell. Really worth checking out. I think Eau de Well is probably very popular from the house. For a while, I was speaking a lot about Benjoin Bohème, which was one of my favorite benzoin fragrances of all time. And then they did the rebranding of that fragrance because it used to be part of a collection that got discontinued, and they kept Benjoin Bohème, and it moved into the 75 ml black bottles. And It's still a great scent. That fragrance is great, but I think this is the forgotten one from the house for sure. That needs to be brought back. What do you guys think of Volutes? Let me know. Add a comment below. Look at the back of the bottle. All right, next we're talking about Lorenzo Villoresi Teint de Neige, an EDP. Speak of the Devil. That's another brand from the city of Florence. I actually shot a video with one of the associates at Lorenzo Villoresi. If you guys are familiar with the brand, go check it out. It's one of the Lorenzo Villoresi associates talking about the brand. But this Teint de Neige EDP is super powdery, like one of the best powdery offerings. It's a lot of musk with heliotrope, jasmine, tonka, and ylang ylang. And there's a little bit of rose in here. This to me smells like a very clean bathroom with a lot of different makeup things for the ladies and makeup powder and, you know, a bouquet of roses sitting in the corner. It's a bit warm, it's a bit humid, but super powdery, very musky. Lots of toiletries is what I get with Teint de Neige. One of the two fragrances I own from the brand, I need to own a few more, but the brand's just kind of not around much. And I went there in 2018 of September. And at that time, the brand is the Arno River and up the hill. So I don't know if it's still up there. It's a bit of a climb. And in September, man, it's really hot and humid there. So I don't know if the brand's still there. I definitely need to go check out the brand and see what's going on with the brand and maybe check out if there's anything new. But what do you guys think of Lorenzo Villoresi Teint de Neige? Add a comment below. That's the EDP version, by the way. But an awesome scent, I think. Forgotten, though. And even though the brand came to Scentfest SF, I want to highlight it here. It's Costume National and Comme. People aren't talking about this one much lately, but for sure needs to be highlighted. I believe the brand is now selling at ZGO Perfumery, so go there and check them out. Costume National Homme is giving me a similar sort of vibe to Ambre Russe. It's cinnamon, it's cloves, it's labdanum, there's patchouli here, cardamom, thyme, grapefruit. I get a dried fruity effect in this. I get a tea effect in this. It's kind of ambery but warm, spicy. Definitely really awesome. Dominique Ropion creation for the guys. They have a Parfum edition, which came out much later than this. And the Parfum is awesome. But I think it's this one that guys used to talk a lot about. From Costume National. Let me know if you're a fan. Did you guys if you came to Scentfest SF, were you able to stop in and check out the brand and discover their fragrances? I'm hoping that they find distribution, and I'm hoping it was true that I heard they were going to be sold at ZGO Perfumery. And if you want to discover the house, go over there and ask them. Tell them Sebastian sent you. I think they are there. And speaking of the fragrances today, I'll tag as many of them as I can. It's YouTube shopping tagged, so you can find them online within the screen. There should be a small button on the left and the bottom that is an icon for YouTube shopping. It usually rotates between the product that I'm speaking about and then the icon. If you click that button, if you're on a computer, it'll open up a list of fragrances in YouTube shopping that I'm speaking about in this particular video on the right. On a phone, it should be on the bottom. Just scroll through and you'll find the products and you can buy them. And if ZGO Perfumery has this, I will tag this. But definitely a solid offering if you haven't tried that one yet. All right, we've got two more fragrances left. This is different companies, the different companies Celle de Vetiver, my original bottle. So Celle de Vetiver and the different company were very popular for a while. I think the brand was it owned by Jean-Claude Elena's daughter. Is that true? But this is a earthy vetiver with a saltiness. Vetiver, there's geranium here, there's lots of sea salt. Iris, there's ylang ylang, cardamom. To me, I feel like the salt adds that kind of marine layer, but it's not a marine fragrance, even though you're talking a lot about salt and it's giving you that effect. It tones down the vetiver as well. If you're kind of not into vetiver, you think it's too masculine or too woody, earthy, it kind of tones it down. But this is definitely one of the most popular offerings from this house. I think the brand disappeared for a while. I believe the brand is back. And this is definitely one of the classics from the house. And if you love vetiver, the salty vetiver variety, definitely check out Celle de Vetiver. So that is from the different company, Celle de Vetiver. And the last but not least, until we have a bonus option, we're talking about the brand Ramon Monegal and its Impossible Iris. Are you guys familiar with this? For a brief while, the brand was selling at Neiman Marcus. Briefly. This was like 2013, I think. Then it just disappeared. And I believe maybe you can find the brand at some niche stores. But to me, this is the combination of mimosa and iris with a little bit of raspberry and ylang ylang. To me also, when you smell this, you get the effect of violet in here. Maybe there's a little bit of violet, but also iris, I think, sometimes tricks your nose acting like violet. But it's super powdery, very floral, a little bit tropical, lightly fruity. I love the name too. Impossible Iris is such a great name. And definitely one of the best from the house. Again, I don't know what's going on with the house too much as of late, but this is one of the best fragrances from the house. I do have to say, when I was at Neiman Marcus, when I first saw them in 2013 at Neiman's, the associate gave me some samples. One of them was their Patchouli, which I couldn't stand. It had a super strong feature of something cologne-like, and I put it on skin, and I couldn't wait to wash it off. It was pretty nauseating. But for me, Impossible Iris is definitely one of the best from the house. I mean, we could have spoken about Flamenco. Flamenco is very popular, so probably people speak about it still. But the brand is a bit quiet, and then this is completely forgotten about. So definitely needs to be highlighted. So this is Impossible Iris from Ramon Monegal. So that's it, guys. 25 great fragrances everyone forgot about. Maybe you forgot about them. Maybe you pushed them way in the back of your fragrance wardrobe or whatever cabinet, and it's sitting back there, and you need to pull it out and check these fragrances out again, because they're really, really awesome fragrances that totally need to be worn and appreciated. But also, maybe you're brand spanking new, you're just starting out, and you're mostly checking out what's new out there, and you want to dig into some of the classics. These are not super classic. They're not 50 years old. They're not 100 years old. They're within the last 20, 25 years. So I think they're still pretty modern and definitely need to be checked out, because these are what really niche was about back then. Back then, designers versus niche, you really could tell them apart. Now, everything is kind of blending in. A lot of fragrances are smelling the same. Niche houses and designer houses are working with the same fragrance houses, the same perfumers. So the fragrances were still smelling the same. If you want to stand out with your smell, go back in time, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and check out these fragrances. I think they're really, really awesome scents. Thanks so much for watching today's video, guys. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please interact with the video, like it, share it, comment comment with the other commenters. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the bell icon so you'll be notified for future videos. And I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye. All right, one bonus offering that I'm going to talk to you guys about today that's currently in our latest Scent Club kit. If you haven't tried it yet, please do. But why isn't anybody talking about Orzel Legrand with their fragrance Chypre Mousse? It's an awesome house. It's an amazing house, I should say. And it's a resurrected house, but not many people speak about it. And you definitely need to speak about the house or check out the house. This is Chypre Mousse, one of the most unique fragrances I've ever put my nose on. This is very earthy, very green, very vegetal, and it's currently featured in the Scent Club kit, as I said. And it's got mossy notes, vegetal notes, aromatic notes, spices, earthy notes. So very unique, Chypre style, but more modern and classic combined together. But I don't know, people forgot about this fragrance, but truly deserves to be checked out. It's one of the best fragrances out there. And you don't even have to buy a full bottle. It's in a recent Scent Club kit. You can pick up the kit and check out what this fragrance is all about. But if you like mushroomy, mossy, earthy Chypres, green leaning, you've got to get your nose on Chypre Mousse. It's one of the best fragrances out there of all time. I think it smells fantastic, truly unique. You'll stand out and really enjoy something that a lot of people will not even know what you're wearing. Anyway, see you guys later. Bye-bye.